particularly want to make a mention of this time of our co-hosts. This event is sponsored by the Elijah Interfaith Institute, hosting Praying Together in Jerusalem, which has been meeting monthly for nearly 5 years already. On our steering committee are Eliyahu, Reuven, and Taleb, who are on the call, and Father Russ, who will be introduced later, who is part of the steering team. We're also hosted by Yiska and her group, and I want to thank her for the partnership. It is a new moon today for Jews and Muslims that both take a lot of notice of the new moon. And when we talk about a new moon, we remind ourselves that no matter how small or low it may feel at the moment, there is a promise of fullness. And we look at the new moon, and the new moon is a symbol of hope. So having this meeting together on the day of the new moon is also symbolic of hope. But at the moment, we're like that very thin sliver of moon. Many of us are feeling the pain and the fear and the isolation of this situation. And so we've invited our religious leaders to share some wisdom on overcoming the fear of the coronavirus. And I'd like to start by asking the Most Reverend Frank Griswold to address us from a Christian perspective with a teaching on overcoming the fear.
Reflecting on fear, its consequences, and its invitations, as I believe. And of course, one of the most obvious things about fear is fear isolates and disconnects people and immobilizes them. And I'm very aware that certainly in the Christian tradition, as well as other traditions, fear is undermined by compassion. Compassion overwhelms fear. Perfect love casts out fear. And one of the things that I've seen here in the United States over the past few days and weeks is many people, rather than withdrawing, have expressed incredible manifestations of compassion and care for others. At a bakery just up the street, children have drawn pictures and put in what they hope for. And one child, under a flower he drew, says, "I hope people take care of people who are in need, and then when the people who are in need are better, they in turn take care of other people," and it repeats itself again and again. The Harvard Business School has just released a document in which one of the things they say is stock up on compassion. And I think compassion is deeply rooted in the human person, and sometimes very negative situations unleash that compassion as we realize that we are one global community. I mean, this disease overleaps all the divisions of nations, of religious traditions, of political points of view. And I'm very aware that the Secretary General of the United Nations has said all warfare at this point should cease. All weapons should be laid down because we are joined together in a common situation of vulnerability and need. And it is only by recognizing our global unity that we can properly address it. And I think that is really an invitation to a deep compassion, which I think, as I said, is rooted in all our traditions. And I hope and pray that that reality emerges from this very difficult and fear-filled and anxious time.
It's horrible we have such a situation, but it's a great honor that I can join all of you. And I've been a big fan of the Elijah Project for a long time, and I'm glad I'm able to participate. So I'd like to start off by a quote by Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, the former chief rabbi of UK. Optimism is the belief that things are going to get better. Hope is the belief that we can make things better. Optimism is a passive virtue. Hope is an active one. It takes no courage to be an optimist. It does need courage to hope. So we need to be able to understand in this time that we also need to be optimistic, but it's more than that. It's about hoping. I've often thought about the difference between an analyst and an activist, between a political analyst and a social activist. A political analyst will tell you what the situation was yesterday. A political activist will tell you what the situation should be tomorrow. We cannot really control this disease. What we can do is we can limit its impact. And therefore, if we deal with the sense of being overwhelmed, we deal with the sense of, powerlessness, we need first to understand that we can do something. And because as Jewish tradition teaches us, Ein haggadah yikar ela maseh. It is not so important what you say, it's important what you do. Therefore, if everyone does social distancing, washing the hands, everyone now knows the drill. But if everyone does it, it means that we have a much better chance of putting this pandemic to an end much quicker. So just as some practical things, one is you got to stay home. It's ironic, I used to dream that I don't have time to stay home, and now it's like it's a curse. The situation is cursed. But staying home doesn't have to be a curse. Very important. Call your kids, call your grandkids. There are people who are really alone out there, and you can do something to make a difference. Number 3, not only call the elderly or the sick, call a friend you haven't talked to in a while. Maybe they also need to hear from you. I was, we never have time for that. I actually spoke to 2 different friends I haven't spoken to in months last night. And just to check up, thank God they're all fine. Everybody's hanging in there. But we keep checking on each other. And while it's incredibly horrible we have this situation, we are blessed with this technology. Now I know the room wasn't big enough. We had to get a big room, but we did it in 10 minutes. We switched the chat room. I mean, we take advantage of technology. I'm a very deep believer. Zoom and WhatsApp is because God blessed us with the knowledge to create such technology. God did not bless us with the knowledge to create this technology so someone can make a lot of money. Making a lot of money is a nice thing. He did it so we can connect better. And we have to learn to use this technology to connect better and better. The other thing I think that in my short teaching is that we need to be very sensitive to the fact that everybody is more tense than usual. And that's myself included. You don't know if somebody, coughs on you, and just in 1 second, all your protections could be for nothing. But in relating to other people, we have to keep in the front of our minds that they're going through the same thing. They're also nervous. They're also frustrated. I saw some little interaction today where I tried to explain to both people, calm down. Mm-hmm. You're right. The other guy was wrong. So what? Be aware, and maybe just this awareness will be helpful that you're not the only person who's nervous out there. Everybody's nervous. And there's nothing much we can do to take away this nervousness. Matter of fact, the nervousness is important because then we're going to be more careful. And just one last teaching, and that comes from Rabbi Akiva Eger. Rabbi Akiva Eger was the rabbi in Poznan, Poland. At that point, it was Posen, Prussia, in the beginning of the 19th century. And he lived through the horrible Cholera plague. Thanks, yeah. I'm so used to saying it in Polish, which is cholera, plague, where like 100,000 people died in Russia. Just in Warsaw, something like over 2,500 people died. Horrible, horrible plague. And he, as one of the leading rabbinic voices, and a matter of fact, Rabbi Akiva Eger is one of the most important rabbis in the last 500 years. I would have to say he definitely made it into the Hall of Fame, the all-star team of rabbis the last 500 years. Rabbis still look at what he wrote in terms of deciding Jewish law today. And so he was turned to him, what are we supposed to do in this horrible plague? And he said several things. One thing that I found very interesting, this is almost 200 years ago, he said, no prayer service could have more than 15 people. In Jewish tradition, you need to have 10 people to create a minyan, to create a community, so all the prayers can be said. He said, at 15, we stop. And he actually said we should post somebody outside the synagogue, tell anybody coming to wait, because that's how the disease spreads. That's what he understood 200 years ago. But much more importantly, among all the other suggestions he makes, he writes at the very end, don't worry, don't get into depression, and distance yourself from any sense of sadness. And I think the wise words of a rabbi written almost 200 years ago, in a different place, in a different time, in a similar situation, applies to us. We need to support each other so that we will lahachik kol minei atzavut, that we will distance ourselves from any kind of sadness. This is a frustrating time. This is a dangerous time. We don't have to make it also into a depressing time. We can make a difference. Thank you.
So first of all, this experience, exactly what we're doing, coming together, this is a deep, deep spiritual teaching and practice. In Sanskrit, we call it Satsang, and it literally means in the presence of truth. But it's that capital T eternal truth that applies to all of us across all borders and boundaries of race and religion and color and culture and country. So usually satsang is something that happens with a lot of people together in one physical space. But really what's most important is the energy and the love together. And so what we're seeing so much now is through this great use of technology, we're able to stay home, stay safe, follow all the rules that we've been given, whether by our medical professionals or by our government officials telling us what we have to do, and to be able to engage in satsang together. And so it's been really an extraordinary, extraordinary time and opportunity. And I was taken very much by what the Reverend was speaking about in the beginning about compassion. Because from the beginning here, since the virus started, we've been speaking about the journey from corona to karuna. Because in Sanskrit and Hindi, the word karuna means compassion. So we've been saying from the beginning that this whole virus experience is a journey. And so it really is, we are all seeing it as an opportunity to really learn deep, deep spiritual truths that we've been told for thousands of years, like, guess what? You're not separate. Guess what? How you live, what you do, impacts people all over the world. But so many of us in so many parts of the world have been living in this illusion of separation. Separation from ourselves, separation from God, separation from our global world, separation from Mother Earth and Mother Nature. And what Corona has brought home so deeply and so clearly is there is no place any of us ends and the rest of the world begins. That which happens in a market, in a city in central China, is having ripple impacts on the shelves of grocery stores of every city in almost every country all over the world. The ripple impact is almost immediate and complete. And so it really has brought us all into this extraordinary opportunity of really realizing what our scriptures and spiritual teachers and sages have been telling us for thousands and thousands of years, that we are one and we are connected. And it's also a time, as the rabbi spoke so beautifully, for us to take action. You know, we have a very simple phrase that says, do your best and then leave the rest to God. And Corona has really given us that in such a perfect opportunity. Doing your best is very simple. 4 steps, 5 steps, 6 steps. And as the rabbi said, they're so simple. Stay home. Maintain the distance. Wash your hands. I mean, not rocket science. Basic stuff. Every one of us can do. And then, once you've done that, leave the rest to God with absolute faith that that which is supposed to happen is exactly that which is going to happen. And it's this really beautiful overlap between personal responsibility, the absolute requirement of every single person on earth, not the few, not people of one religion or one race or one socioeconomic status or one caste, but everyone, to step up, to take the responsibility, to be the solution rather than the problem. And then for all of us to have that opportunity to really retreat into our physical and spiritual caves. The universe has literally sent us into our caves to go inward, to meditate, to pray, to connect. There's a beautiful teaching in the Bhagavad Gita. You were asking about anxiety and fear. There's a beautiful teaching in the Bhagavad Gita of fearlessness, abhayam. Be fearless. Not because everything is going to go exactly the way you want it. Not because the world is your vending machine that whatever you want, you push a button, it comes out. But be fearless. And the very last point that I would like to share is 2 teachings that go together very beautifully. And the first is a teaching in which, also in the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says, whenever darkness is beating light, whenever darkness is winning out over light, whenever unrighteousness is winning out over righteousness, I incarnate, I come in form on earth to restore light to the darkness, to restore righteousness to lack of righteousness. And the other teaching is that within every one of us is God, that God lives within each of us. And when you take those 2 teachings together, what it tells us is that every one of us is the embodiment of the divine right here, right now, to restore that light to the darkness, to bring that light where there is darkness, to bring that healing where there is sickness. And so it's a tragic time, a very challenging time, and an unprecedented opportunity to be grounded in our spiritual truths and serving in action ourselves, our bodies, our families, our communities, our nations, and our entire global family.
I am honored to be part of your session and your beautiful lectures from rabbis from the United States and from the lady from India. I share your concerns, and I want to be with my compassion with you in Jerusalem and all over the world. And if you allow me, I would like to make some points regarding this current situation. First of all, I would like to say that fear is not all the bad. On the contrary, fear has something to do with us not to fall into a cliff. So we have two kinds of fear, a soft fear and hard fear. Now, the soft fear prevents us from doing immoral things if we have fear of God, where is nobody there to check us except God. So this soft fear is welcomed by our religion, because you have to have some fear. You cannot live without fear, but you cannot survive without hope. But the hard fear that we are experiencing right now is something that we did not expect to be in such a way hard for us. And unfortunately, we have to recognize that we are now more global than ever before in the history of humankind. Unfortunately, we are not global by love, but by fear. So fear has united us in the concern of an invisible particle, an enemy that is, as we can see, more powerful than any nuclear or atomic weapons. So we are faced now as human race by two enemies that we are aware that they are our enemies. One is huge, big. It engraves in us a hard fear, and that is atomic bomb, nuclear war, and all this. And even we don't know how many these weapons are available that can destroy our entire planet. But now we are faced with a small enemy, with invisible enemy that we don't know where did it come from. Do we? I think we do know where this virus comes from, because it is not coming. I believe that it is somehow in our own hearts and minds, but we have a hard time to recognize that and to confess. So we are united by fear, which is very hard from us. Let me then read my prayer that I used to read every year at 11th of July in the Potocari Cemetery of the genocide in Bosnia. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Our Lord, do not let success deceive us, nor failure takes us to despair. Always remind us that the failure is a temptation that precedes success. Our Lord, teach us that tolerance is the highest degree of power and the desire for revenge, the first sign of weakness. Our Lord, if you deprive us of our property, give us hope. If you grant us with success, give us also the will to overcome defeat. If you take from us the blessing of health, provide us with the blessing of faith. Our Lord, if we sin against people, give us the strength of apology. And if people sin against us, give us the strength of forgiveness.
Our Lord, if we forget thee, do not forget us. Our Lord, may sickness become health, may grief become hope, may love become justice, may tears become prayers, that coronavirus never happens again to anyone, anywhere. Amen.
Amen. We want to meet each other. We want to know who else is here on this call. And part of praying together in Jerusalem is not just listening to others, but to being able to share with each other.
So there's a beautiful Hindu prayer that it's short. I'll give you the Sanskrit and then I'll give you the English. And it says, Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhaved. And it means, oh God, may all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings attain peace and perfection. May no one suffer. And that's a very common and very, you could say, one of the basic tenets in terms of prayers of the Hindu tradition. And it, of course, is for all peoples, of all races, of all religions. It's not limited, of course, just to the Hindus. It's for all. But it's also for all species. It's not even just all people. It's actually all beings. And so it really is a prayer for all of our global family, of the human race, of course, but of all of the species who are our sisters and brothers here on planet Earth. And it even includes, you know, the trees and the rivers and the mountains. May all beings be happy and all beings be healthy.
Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my path into life. God is my shepherd, so nothing shall I want. I rest in the meadows of faithfulness and love. I walk by the quiet waters of peace. Though I should wander the valley of death, I fear no evil, for you are my side. God and your staff, my comfort and my hope.
I'd like to share with you a prayer that is recited during Jewish feast days. Fast days, in time of need. It's a prayer that begins with the appeal to God as our Father, our King, and it's a litany. In other words, it keeps the our Father, our King, and then goes through various expressions, one after the other. Usually they recite just one of them, And what I'd like to do is to engage in group chanting, which means that actually people can open their microphones, because we'd like to get a sense of everyone praying together. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Oh, Father, before you,
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha. Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chatanu Lefanecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, Mina Magefa, Mina Chalatecha.
oh Father,
Avinu Malkeinu, Mina Magefa, Mina Chalatecha.
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 Avinu Malkeinu,
We always finish praying together in Jerusalem with silence. And it's a moment of silent contemplation. And we always say there are two things that we're thinking about in our silence together. The first one is we are expressing our gratitude, because no matter what we are all going through, and everybody's going through something, we've had a beautiful, uplifting experience together today. And we are very grateful that we are in a position to have done this. There are people in this world who don't have the technology or the health to do what we have just done, to be together like this. So we share in our silence, we share gratitude. And the second thing we share in our silence is a joint prayer for those who need our prayers. A prayer of, we are impeaching the Lord for health, for healing, for the world and for the individuals who need it. So we have that dual purpose in being in silence together. I think it is really important at this point that anyone whose mic is not muted does so. I'm going to mute mine. And I'm just going to ask us to keep on our gallery view so we can see each other. And I'm going to ask us to just have 2 minutes of silence and be aware of those with whom we are sharing this silence. So let's be in silence together. I thank you one and all